Welcome, pool guys and gals, to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast, where your host, Lauren Broom, will take a splash into many topics in the pool industry to educate all aquatic professionals. Listen in, and you just might be surprised what you'll learn. So let's jump right in.
Welcome, everybody, to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. And in season 2, episode 38, I got to talk to Joel Gray from Jack's Magic, and we talked about pool stains and anything about pool stains and how to identify them and treat them. So if you are into that kind of thing, this is the episode for you. I also want to say thank you to my awesome sponsors of the podcast, Skimmer and Pool Parts to Go. Thank you for being continued sponsors of education to pool professionals in our pool industry. So let's jump right into this episode, everybody.
This is Skimmer, software for the modern pool professional. What can you do with Skimmer? See all your customers on a map, build service routes quickly, and let Skimmer optimize them for you. Access customer information, including contact details and full service history, anytime and anywhere. Customize work orders to track jobs like repairs and filter cleanings. Email your customers when you complete a service. You can include service details and on-site photos. Does your customer need a part? Add it to the shopping list and track it from purchase to installation. Skimmer will even remind you what parts you need for the day, and you can mark them as installed right when you're finished. Skimmer doesn't just store your service history. It helps you get paid. We integrate with QuickBooks Online for fast, easy invoicing. And we've got more billing options coming soon. All that's just the beginning. Go to getskimmer.com to watch our demo video, check out our online tutorials, and see if Skimmer is right for you.
Welcome, everybody, today to Let's Talk About Pools. And on my podcast today, my podcast guest is Joel Gray, Regional Sales Manager for Florida for Jack's Magic. Welcome, Joel. Wonderful to have you on the podcast today.
Hi, Lauren. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Tell me a little bit about you and Jack's Magic and that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I live in Tampa, Florida. I've been in Florida since 1989 for 32 years now. I don't know where the time goes. Spent 20 years with Hayward Pool Products as a sales rep here in Florida, a few years on the East Coast and most of it here on the West Coast of Florida. And spent about 6 years after that selling solar pool heating and have been with Jack's Magic now. It'll be 5 years this summer. So have enough knowledge just to be a little bit dangerous in the pool business.
Awesome.
And,
what kind of products in general do you guys offer to the pool industry?
So at Jack's Magic, Jack got started in this industry over 30 years ago, doing stain removal products for pools, primarily removing and preventing metal staining in swimming pools, whether it be iron, copper, calcium scale, the most common ones that we do. There's others as well. But that's the core of the line. And then he's branched out from there to introduce items for service people and even residential homeowners that are servicing pools, taking care of their own pool, to tile cleaning products, filter cleaning products, things to help make it easier to service the pool. We'll go through these here in a few minutes.
That sounds very awesome for the pool service tech, having things to assist them in their job. And that's why I wanted to have you guys on today, because I wanted to make sure that my listeners that are pool service professionals understand there's things out there that they can use to help them out on their job. There's lots of these different specialty chemicals that you guys have to offer that will make their lives a little bit easier, right?
Absolutely.
So
these are some of our best-selling items, so I'm excited to show them.
Well, let's jump right into the products. I think that the listeners are really excited to hear what you guys have to offer. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Joel, and you show us your products.
Sure. Okay, so we'll divide this into two parts, and basically the first part we'll talk about some of these service items that we have to help make it easier for service technicians and even homeowners that are taking care of their own pools. A few years back, Jack purchased a company called Power Blue, and one of their best-selling products is this waterline tile cleaner. This is a pre-mixed formula. It's a high pH solution, And it's to clean the scum line off of tile. A lot of times in heavily used pools, commercial pools, or even a residential pool where there was maybe a party over the weekend, a lot of people in the pool. You get that non-living organic matter that settles on the tile, forms the scum line. And we make a commercial tile soap, which comes in large containers, and you can mix it with acid or water. And a lot of guys like to do that, a lot of the experienced service technicians in the industry. But this is really a much more, I think, user-friendly item. We sell this in quart spray bottles and even larger 5-gallon and 53-gallon drums, 1-gallon containers. So this is already pre-mixed. You don't have to mix it with anything. You basically just spray this on the tile with the tile dry. Within about 30 seconds, you'll see that scum line just dripping right down, and you can take a wet pool brush and just brush that debris, away very quickly. So it's a great degreasing product. I even have guys that have used this on the wheels on the tires on their trucks to remove the brake dust and the grease, and it's a great degreaser. So another one that's very, very popular tile cleaning product is Power Blue Scale Off. This is one of our best sellers here in Florida. It's very common to have a white calcium buildup on the tile, especially where there's a spillover maybe between the spa and the pool, or where there's a water feature spraying water onto the tile. Anytime you aerate water, especially warmer water, it can deposit calcium if the calcium level is high enough in the water. So this is a very low pH product, and there's some major advantages here to using this versus muriatic acid to clean tile. I've done counter days at distributors and talked to the service guys coming in the morning, and hey, how do you clean that scale on the tile that you run into? Well, I use a pumice stone, because that's really labor intensive, and you can scratch the tile. But even worse, I'll hear guys telling me I spray acid on the tile, or I mix water and acid and spray it on the tile. That's a really bad idea, because muriatic acid is very aggressive, and it can get into the grout line and start to etch away at the grout. And then down the road, you can have tiles literally dropping into the pool. Water does not neutralize muriatic acid very well. If I were to pour acid on the sidewalk out in front of my place here and rinse it with water, there'd probably be a hole in a few weeks. So that's what muriatic acid can do to a grout line. This has no muriatic acid in it. It's a low pH solution. With the tile dry, you spray this on. Within about 20 or 30 seconds, you will hear it sizzling. It actually sticks to the scale on the vertical tile surface. So unlike acid, it doesn't just run right down. You'll see it start to foam up, and then within about a minute, while it's still wet on the tile, you take a non-abrasive brush, just a plastic bristle brush, or the red tile brush that we have in our industry, wet it a little bit, scrub away. It cuts through up to 4 millimeters of scale at a time, and this is absolutely one of our best sellers here in Florida. And people ask why. Well, there's so many pools that are on a steady diet of liquid chlorine, and it just creates calcium compounds in the water. That with the plaster swimming pools, there's a lot of calcium in the water, and pH of liquid chlorine is 13. So it's creating a scale environment, and there's a chemical reaction that takes place with warm water and high pH where you literally get calcium carbonate forming in the water. So it's very common to have that issue.
I've seen that one on the Facebook group. So I can attest that it's probably your popular one. People take pictures of it and put it in Facebook groups.
And then the other Power Blue product I wanted to focus on is a cartridge and DE filter cleaner. Back in the day when I worked for Hayward, sometimes I would get cartridge elements back from service guys or builders, and they were newer elements. They were pristine white, but they were very heavy. They were building up high pressure in 2 or 3 days, and they would tell me, hey, I just cleaned this. I don't know what the problem is. Well, I didn't really know it was a problem at the time, but they were cleaning them by soaking them in acid and water, buckets of acid and water. And acid embeds all that inorganic or that organic non-living matter into the element and literally destroys it. It embeds all that stuff into the fabric of the cartridge element and also on a DE grid assembly. So this is a high pH solution which actually flushes out all that debris. So after taking the cartridge element out and thoroughly hosing it off, or taking a DE grid assembly out after backwashing it, want to hose it off, spray this on, wait 5 minutes, and it will degrease the fabric on the grid assembly of a DE filter or the pleats, the fabric on the cartridge element, and 5 minutes, and then just hose it right off with a high pressure hose, and you're done. A lot of service guys carry both this and this on their truck so they can do the thorough cartridge cleanings and then scale off for the tile. And I don't want to forget about Power Blue waterline tile cleaners. So those are three of the real hot Power Blue sellers that we have. And I'm not going to touch on everything that we have today, but I am going to try to touch on all the things that are really pertinent to the line. You know, some of our best sellers, at least here in Florida, from what I've seen. And Florida's a pretty good random sampling market. You know,
I totally
it happens
agree.
in the pool industry. It's going to happen here in Florida, right?
Yes, I totally agree.
Another popular product is this Tile Plus stuff. Again, this is a pre-mixed solution, and this is very similar to our tile soap, but it's pre-mixed and it comes in a quart bottle, so you don't have to mix anything. It's already it's an acidic paste, very similar to what the guys will end up with when they take our commercial tile soap and mix it with acid. And this is great for removing metal stains on a deck or on a grout line, or even for cleaning the tile if you prefer to use a paste rather than a spray-on liquid. This is becoming very, very popular. It's called Jack's Magic Tile Plus stuff. So want to show that.
Some exciting products there.
Yep. Surface Magic. I do counter days at distributors, trade shows. You may have seen this when we met at the trade show in Orlando a few months ago. These just fly. When I have them at the trade show, people come, can I get one? Can I get one? They all love it. And at distributor counters, this sells like lightning. And what this does is it basically pushes all the surface debris in the pool from one side to the other in about 5 minutes. So rather than the technician or whoever's skimming the pool, standing there for 15 minutes, running around with a net, pushing debris from one side to the other, as they're skimming, things tend to go away from the net as easily as they go into the net. This will take all that surface debris and push it to the other side of the pool. And it takes about 5 minutes to do its job. But then you walk over to the other side of the pool in 2 minutes, you're done. You just walk along the edge of the pool and you're done skimming. So it's great for screen pools too. We have so many of them here in Florida because the gnats and the pollen and the fine debris that get through the screen, that's the stuff that you end up chasing around a lot. So, but on open pools, grass clippings, pine needles, leaves, really good for that too. People ask me, is it soap? Because years ago, guys would use a few drops of Dawn soap in a pool to coagulate everything in one area, but there's no soap in it. It doesn't add phosphates to the water, the bad phosphates. This is it's a unique formula. It's an isosurfactant. That's how it's listed on our chemistry sheet. And basically, the best way to use this for a service technician, and I have service guys that come up to me at distributors and trade shows and say, if it wasn't for this stuff, I wouldn't even be cleaning pools. They get very spoiled using this. It's kind of like remote control. I'm old enough to remember getting up to change TV channels, and then we got remote, and you wonder how you ever got up and changed the channel on a TV. But when they get to the job, first thing they should do is hop out of the truck, walk up to the equipment, turn off the pump, and walk up to the pool and pick the midpoint in the pool, shallow end, deep end, just go right middle, but put the drops in one spot where the tile hits the water, about 5 or 6 drops for the average residential pool. It'll say on the bottle 2 drops per 100 square foot of surface area. So for a 14 by 28 here in Florida, maybe 5 or 6 drops. It's better to underdose it and then walk away. Go back to the truck, get the pole, the net, do the water chemistry, clean the filter, and within that 5 minutes time, you walk back to the pool and everything is on the other side. It doesn't put a rainbow on the surface of the pool like soap would. It doesn't put suds in the filter. There's no chemistry alteration in the water. It really is unique and amazing. And again, just dose it in one spot. Don't dose it all around. It's so powerful that it tends to work against itself if you do that. And if it's a windy day, rather than dose it in the middle of the pool at the edge where I was talking about a minute ago, just dose it where the wind is coming from. So if the wind's blowing from shallow end to deep end, dose it in the shallow end and let the wind assist you. But once you try this, you'll never look back. This is unbelievable. There's nothing like it on the market.
Like you said, like the remote control for the TV.
Yes. All right. So I'm reaching down here. I don't mean to be rude, but I have things at my side. So do you have any questions on, what we went over as far as some of the
No,
service items.
No, it's pretty amazing stuff that you're showing so far.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And something for commercial pools, especially the heavily used pools, we have an enzyme that's really unique in the industry, in that most of the enzymes out there are liquid enzymes. And enzymes, what they really do is they off-gas the non-living organic matter that gets introduced into pools, makeup, sweat, soap scum, all the yucky stuff that forms the scum line on the tile that we were talking about earlier. So most of the liquid enzymes in the industry, they have to be dosed weekly, and they have a very low chlorine tolerance, usually at around 5 parts per million, some of them as low as 5 parts per million chlorine. They start breaking down. And typically when someone's out servicing a pool and adding an enzyme, they're also shocking the pool. And a lot of commercial pools, they run the chlorine, higher than 5 parts per million anyway sometimes, especially in the spas. So this enzyme stands up to 50 parts per million chlorine. It's called Super Pack. I'm going to hold up a little card here on it. And this is not a liquid. It basically is a powdered enzyme. And I'm opening a sample bag. We sell these in retail bag sizes. Most of the people that buy this in the trade buy them in buckets, where you can get 60 or 400 of these in a bucket. I'm going to show you what this is. Just going to take me a second here to open the bag because it's Ziploc. And there we go. So inside this bag, you have 2 of these little 1 ounce pouch of enzyme. And it's a powder that's in food grade plastic. And when you throw this in the tank of a commercial pool or the skimmer of a residential pool or just right in the water, the plastic bag and the powder dissolve within 2 minutes, and it starts going to work. And this will really give you a noticeable difference in about a week to 10 days. It really kicks in. One of these will treat up to 20,000 gallons for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So you're not adding it weekly. Yeah. It's added every 2 weeks. If the pool's between 20 and 40,000 gallons, then you add 2 of these every 2 weeks. If it's between 40 and 60,000, you add 3 every 2 weeks. You don't cut the bag and underdose. If it's a spa under 20,000 gallons or a pool under 20, just add 1 every 2 weeks. You can't overdose this. It does not alter water chemistry. It basically just off-gasses all the organic non-living matter in the water. And that stuff leads to chlorine too. When you have too much of that stuff in the water, the oxidizing potential of the chlorine will run to that, and it can create chlorine lock and combined chlorine, which is, inactive sanitizer in the water. So that's not a good thing to have. So this will actually free up your chlorine. It will reduce chlorine consumption. You won't have to be adding as much chlorine typically in a pool that had this problem. And the great thing, the most visible thing, is it's going to eliminate the scum line on the tiles. So for these guys that are having to clean scum lines off commercial pools several times a week, think about the man hours and the money spent on tile soap or waterline tile cleaner. Yeah, I'm probably going to cut into my sales on tile soap and waterline tile cleaner by selling these, but it's going to make their lives so much easier. And the cost for one of those little packs, if they buy it in a large bucket like this, the trade cost should be under $4 a pack. So it's very inexpensive. You're looking for a 20,000 gallon pool, under $8 a month to treat with a liquid enzyme. That's, of course, we're talking about wholesale here.
Wow.
So pretty impressive. People that try these absolutely love them. And again, they're available in 60 and 400 count buckets, if you can see that on the card.
Well, especially right now with chlorine shortages and stuff like that, you want to have things like that are going to assist the chlorine. If you can, basically that's doing oxidation for you and getting rid of a lot of that extra stuff so that the chlorine doesn't have to oxidize. It can now just disinfect. So you'll get more use out of your chlorine, which is awesome right now.
Yep. One item I didn't bring in is filter fiber stuff. I'm going to show it in the brochure here. Hopefully it's large enough. But here at the top of the brochure, I don't know if everybody can see that, but we make a product called Filter Fiber Stuff, which is a natural pulp fiber. And this is recommended in all of our stain treatments, as well as in just to help clarify water. It is NSF approved, ANSI 50 approved. So I have a lot of guys that use this on commercial pools. It is not only a DE substitute, but it does a great job clarifying the water down to better than DE filtration. It actually filters down to 1 to 2 microns.
Wow.
It can be added to a sand system, just a few ounces in a sand filter, in the average residential size sand filter, or in a cartridge filter. It'll tell you on the bag 3 ounces per 25 square foot of cartridge filtration. And this is added through the skimmer with the pump running, just like DE would be. You mix it into a slurry in a bucket, and you pour it through the skimmer with the pump running, and it coats that cartridge element, takes you down to better than DE filtration, coats a sand bed, does the same thing, or can be a substitute for DE filter. Why for diatomaceous earth in a DE filter? Why use this versus diatomaceous earth? Well, diatomaceous earth and a lot of the substitutes that are on the market claiming to not be diatomaceous earth and something better are actually carcinogens, which, they get in your lungs, they scar your lungs. DE is very sharp. You don't want to breathe that stuff in. This is a natural pulp, food grade edible fiber. The owner's daughter, Nadia, who really is doing a lot of running our company these days, she has a 16-year-old cat named Lucky. And I'm showing the wrong side of the brochure, sorry. But she puts a few ounces of this on Lucky's cat food every couple of weeks to put more fiber on his diet. So Lucky stays regular. So just a little humor there, but that is true. So you don't need to wear a mask when using this stuff. You can mix it by hand in a bucket of pool water. It is not a carcinogen. When you rinse off a cartridge element on the equipment pad, typically, right? Or they backwash the sand filter or the DE filter. If that's done on a lawn, it doesn't kill the grass. It actually feeds the lawn. It's of the earth, so it's natural stuff.
I have to say that's pretty awesome because I just became an authorized OSHA trainer. So getting into that OSHA type stuff, occupational health and safety to the employee who's actually handling that, that's awesome that there's an alternative. Plus also, my public health background, it's if that's filtering down to that 1 to 2 micron size, it's effective possibly at filtering out cryptosporidium oocysts, which are bigger than 1 to 2 microns. DE's right there at the micron size. So having something else that's smaller will actually help get rid of some of those oocysts in the water. And if we have a facility that's on a sand filter, sand filters definitely would not be able to filter out oocysts from cryptosporidium. So if they added this as a layer on top of the sand bed, it's possible it's going to help assist you when you have an outbreak. And especially a public facility, maybe a splash pad or something like that with my listeners. Some of my listeners are Parks and Rec and have splash pads. This could be something that's a product that would help with those outbreaks as well.
And we sell that in 9, 18, and 36 ounce bags. So it's great for retail stores, and also in 22 and 44 pound bags. So I have several commercial service companies around the state that buy it in 22 and 44 pound bags on big pallets. So it is a little pricier than DE, but there are a myriad of advantages to it. So, and many of which you just talked about. So thank you, Lauren. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover on the non-stain removal and prevention portion of our line.
That was awesome. Thank you very much. So are we going to be getting into your stain side now?
We are. This is the meat and potatoes of the line, and this is how Jack really got started. So this all starts with, if somebody has a stain pool, we're going to get into we'll do the stain treatment and prevention kind of at the same time here. But if someone has a stain pool, we make powders that lift metal stains from plaster. And, brown and green stains, I've seen pools stained this way for 3 or 4 years where the technician was brushing and was convinced it was metal. And there's a really great separator for what somebody believes could be a metal or an organic discoloration in a pool like algae. And look, tannins can be both. Tannins can have metals in them because that's usually tannic acid from plant growth or trees, leaves falling in the pool. There's metals in the ground that those leaves can deposit in the water, and also that kind of debris in the pool can lead to algae growth. So the great separator for these brown, green, yellowish stains, if you're not sure if they're iron, copper, or algae, because copper can be any color from pink to black. I've been out on pools that look like a tie-dye shirt. Copper has many different ways that it oxidizes in many different colors. Sometimes people will put a 3-inch trichlor tab on a stain. They'll say, hey, it lifted it, it's white there where I put the tab. Well, that's great, but the problem is trichlor tabs have a pH of around 3. So the acid will lift metal and the chlorine will kill algae, and you'll walk away not really knowing what you did. The real separator is calcium hypochlorite. Cal Hypo, powdered bleach, bagged shock, and powdered, usually sold in a 1-pound bag, $4 or $5 retail, less wholesale, obviously. It has a pH of 10.6. So because it's not acidic, it can't lift a metal. So if you take some Cal Hypo and put it on a stained area, for maybe 10 seconds or so, I don't want to leave it there too long because it's bleach. It can bleach a dark colored finish if you leave it there long enough. But you get any lifting or fading of that stain with Cal Hypo, you are not dealing with metal. At least in that one spot, you're dealing with something organic, something alive, algae. So then you have a pathway forward. So if you want to do that test first, you can. But if you realize that it's a metal stain, the way to get started with our process is the Jack's Magic Stain Identification Kit. And the whole purpose for this kit, and this retails for about $15, okay, and any given retail store. So obviously, people buying wholesale are going to get it for much less, people in the trade. This tells you if an in-water treatment is going to work. Why is the Jack's Magic stain removal process so popular in the first place? Well, one, it's an in-water stain treatment process. You don't have to drain the pool. I mean, That's great, right? How much easier? Yeah, you don't have to drain the pool. But secondly, it's not aggressive against the finish. Fiberglass, vinyl, plaster, whatever the finish is, this is not a drain and acid wash like you would do in a plaster pool. That literally is stripping a thin layer of plaster off the finish. This is a non-aggressive way at lifting and removal metal staining out of the pool, no matter what the surface is. And it's certainly more effective a lot of times than an acid wash too, because the product is added to the water. And so the contact time on the surface of the pool is a lot longer. You're circulating the product in the water. It could be for even a couple of weeks if it's a copper or a scale treatment. Could be, it may not take that long. But a lot of times with acid, you're just pouring the product down the wall and the contact time is very short, and it doesn't always work that well. So what's in this kit? Well, first of all, before you even get started with this kit, there are water chemistry parameters on the back of the box. And, a lot of us are in a hurry these days, and especially guys, right? Hey, I don't need to read the directions. I got this. Or the consumer says, I've been bringing my water in every week to the pool store. I know my water's right. I know these parameters. I'm good. I'm going to tell you, these stain removal parameters are much different than everyday water swimming parameters for swimming. So if you don't follow the directions, and number one in the directions is balance the water into the parameters on the back of the box. If you don't do this, this is not going to work, and you're going to walk away thinking that you can't do an in-water stain treatment, and that would be a shame. We make this kit very inexpensive because you got to do this before you do a treatment, because this kit will tell you if in-water treatment is going to work. Because it's not the most aggressive approach, it doesn't always work. If you have inches thick of scale, calcium scale on your pool, this may not work. If you have an iron stain that's been on your plaster for 8 years, like the stain on my shirt, if I waited 3 months to throw it in the wash, it may not come out, okay? But that's the reason for this kit. It's not necessarily to identify the metal that you're dealing with, although it will do that. People say, well, I know it's copper, it's blue, I don't need to use the kit. Yes, you do. Not only to see if a treatment's going to work, but we have 2 different copper treatments, which we'll get into. So I'm going to show you what's in the box, because now that you balance the water, everybody, and look, the parameters, they're right there. Free chlorine, total chlorine, pH, alkalinity, calcium stabilizer, and total dissolved solids. This is on our website, jacksmagic.com. You can call us at 727-536-4500. We'll go over this with you. But for the purposes of time, I'm not going to go through the numbers today. They're not that far from normal swimming ranges, but the numbers are lower. But inside the box are sample packets of our 3 stain lifting powders. And of course, we sell these in bulk for treatments, but you get a sample packet of the iron and cobalt powder. You get a sample packet of the copper and scale powder, which is very good for lifting a lot of forms of copper and also for calcium scale. And then you get a sample packet of a strong oxidizer labeled O2 Safe Shock, and this is not in there to shock the pool. This is to oxidize a layer of copper, which we will get into here shortly. So the box is going to take you through the test step by step, and there may be 4 tests that you do, up to 4 tests. So number 1 is balance the water. Number 2 is turn off the pump because you want to run the test with the pump off. And numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the 4 tests that you'll do. Okay. People often ask me, well, my stains are 6 feet down on the floor, way down the wall. What's the best way to get the powder down there to test the spot? And the answer to that is, in our industry, we have skimmer socks or pump basket socks. They're those white socks that are reusable. I'll pour the powder in there, then tie it on a pool brush, clip the brush onto my telepole, drop it in the water, and now I have a little sock bomb with the powder in it that I can wedge between the brush and the stain, and it'll tell you on the box 30 to 45 seconds. That time frame is on there for a reason. If you have to let the product sit there for 5 minutes to remove a stain, that's no good. This is a direct contact test, and the 30 to 45 seconds, the results you get should mirror the results you get doing the in-water stain treatment. We've tested it over and over again, and I'll get calls from people saying, hey, I started a scale treatment, and it's not going so well. It's been a week or 2, and this isn't working. And I'll say, did you do an ID? Yeah, I did the ID. Well, how long did you let the copper and scale powder sit on that scale for? Well, I had to let it sit about 10 minutes before the scale started removing. Okay, then I don't know if you heard me dropping the packet, but then I know, that they had a problem. I mean, there's just too much scale there. It's not going to lift the scale. Our process isn't going to work. And that's where they may have to get more aggressive. There's always more aggressive options. I don't like recommending them, but we mentioned, a drain and acid wash earlier, especially for scaling, that sometimes will work, where this may not. So there are always more aggressive approaches, but typically they involve draining the pool. There are low alk treatments you can do, but a lot of times those aren't, any more effective than doing our process. So to get back into the testing, basically the first test it's going to tell you, which is number 3 on the back of the box, is half a packet of the iron and cobalt product. And you just apply it directly to the stain. Look, if the stain's on the top step or a swim out, you don't need to use the sock. With the pump off, you can just drop the powder. It'll settle in that area, and you're letting it sit 30 to 45 seconds, and you brush it away. If you get removal, that's great. Test number 1 corresponds to treatment number 1, which is the iron and cobalt treatment. And the chemistry parameters for the treatments are the same virtually as they are in the identification process. The only difference is actually in the iron treatment, where you're dropping the free and total chlorine levels to under 1 part per million. The great thing about this is it's only a 2-day process of lifting the iron off of the finish, but the process of removal in the water is up to 3 weeks. Now, you can swim after rebalancing the water to the lower chlorine levels for the iron treatment. When you start to rechlorinate after a couple of days, you probably can get back in the pool. You may have to rebalance alkalinity and pH, but typically those aren't running that low during this treatment.
Just a quick intermission to say thank you to Pool Parts To Go. If you haven't been to their website, poolpartstogo.com, go ahead and check it out. You can order so many things as a pool professional from this awesome company. So check it out. And thank you, Pool Parts To Go, for being a continued sponsor of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast and continuing education for our pool professionals in our industry. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this episode about pool stains.
The treatment involves the powder, which lifts the iron off of the finish. And a lot of times people will walk away and say, hey, I'm done. I don't need to add anything else. Why would I? I got removal so quick. I'm going to tell you, if you don't add one of our sequestering agents, you're going to be in trouble, because what the powder did was it lifted the iron into solution. And Lauren, you know as well as I do that pool filters don't do a very good job of capturing metals If they did, we probably wouldn't be in business. Metals pass right through pool filters. That's how the pool got stained in the first place. And what you need is a sequestering agent to remove the metal from the water. And look, people will ask, why did my pool stain? You've been servicing my pool for years. What happened here? Well, metals build up in pool water over time. I'm going to compare this to humidity building up in the air in Florida on an August afternoon, okay? By 4 p.m, a lot of days in August, the air can't hold any more water, and the metals will come, or the water comes out of the air and it rains. So how do metals build up in pool water over time? Well, a lot of times source water, especially well water, is loaded with iron. Maybe they have cast iron plumbing running to the home. It's an older home. Copper, maybe they have a gas heater, which is starting to put copper into the water from the heat exchanger. Copper algicides, iron and muriatic acid. I mean, there's so many ways that metals get into water, and this can, take years for the metals to build up to the point, a breaking point, usually at about 0.3 parts per million in solution, or higher than that. And you'll go to bed one night and the pool looks great, and you wake up the next morning and the pool is stained. And this can happen for a number of reasons with, metals building up in the water. The catalyst could be unbalanced water. And we don't really have time today to go through this, but, you have to refer to the saturation index of water and keeping balanced pH, alkalinity, and calcium. Those are the key variables. Yes, temperature weighs in, but it's a very minor factor. So balanced water is your best friend, but pools can stain even with balanced water. And a lot of pools that I go out on that are stained have very high chlorine levels. Chlorine's a great sanitizer. It's also a great oxidizer. And it can be the lightning rod to drive iron and copper right out of the water. And we know that high chlorine levels also create high pH levels when it's liquid chlorine, and that can create a scale environment in the water. So I'm getting a lot of calls these days because of all the pools on liquid chlorine here, especially in Florida. My pool is scaled up. My dark finish looks grayed out. My finish is rough and it looks white. I have bird droppings in my pool. Those aren't bird droppings typically. They're calcium carbonate deposits, or the startup wasn't done right and it's calcium hydroxide that wasn't taken out of the water on startup, and it's settled to the floor of the pool or on the finish or wherever, and usually on the floor because it's heavy, and it scales up the pool. So I know I'm jumping around here, but I'm trying to get into why pools stain and the removal process. So we have 4 sequestering agents on the market. I didn't bring in the pink stuff, but we have blue stuff, purple stuff, and magenta. So I want to take a moment to go through these and what these do. So basically, Jack's first sequestering agent over 30 years ago was Jack's Magic Pink stuff. And pink, these are all full spectrum sequestering agents, let me say that. But some are a little more specific for some things than for others. And pink is very specific for iron. A couple of years later, Jack came out with the blue stuff, which really handles iron just as well as pink, but does copper better. So what these do is these cluster the iron and copper that are floating around in the water, and they sequester them so the filter can capture them and remove them from the water.
I've been told to think of sequestering agents like a jury being sequestered for a court case. So you hold them and they can't leave.
Right.
And it then allows to build those metals into big enough molecules or particles that can be removed by your filter at that point.
Correct. And look, we have competitors out there that are selling, metal prevention, staining prevention, and removal products as sequestering agents, and they're not. They're actually chelators. We make a chelating agent called ionizer stuff. And there's a big difference between a chelator and a sequestering agent. Sequestering agents cluster, like you were saying, group them together, like the jurors, right, that are sequestered. They group those metals and minerals together. And look, calcium's a metal and a mineral, so that's included in this. And our sequestering agents are all full spectrum, but we're going to get into the specifics here of each one in a second. But I just wanted to show you that we have a chelating agent. Why would you want to use a chelating agent? Well, if you look at the label, it's called ionizer stuff. Chelators don't remove metals and minerals from the water. They put a protective shell around them like the candy coating on an M&M. So with an ionization system where somebody's using a copper or silver ionizer and they're using that metal to help sanitize the water, where they can keep the chlorine level a little bit lower. Maybe they have an allergy to chlorine, so they got an ionization system. This keeps the metals and minerals in the water, but puts a protective shell around them so they don't precipitate out of solution and stain the pool. Now, look, eventually, those metals and minerals are going to build up in the pool to a breaking point, and the pool may stain. But that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Those metals and minerals don't stay in chelation forever. So using a chelating product when you're trying to remove metals and minerals is really contrary to what you want to do, especially on a startup or when you're doing a stain removal. It's crazy because you're just keeping everything in suspension and waiting for the inevitable to happen again. So yeah, chelating agents, they're less expensive. But I have competitors out there selling products as prevention products for staining when all they are is chelators, and they're just really putting off the inevitable because eventually sunlight and chlorine and time just take the chelation off those metals and minerals, and out they come and they'll stain the pool. So, but anyway, back to blue stuff, very good for iron, copper, other metals, and also, these handle calcium as well. So, but more specifically for iron and copper here, it's primary targets. Okay.
So pink, what was pink? The pink stuff again? I know you didn't have the bottle. I didn't think you had the bottle, but what was?
Yeah, I've had a lot of folks that are handling blue now versus pink because this is really pink stuff that does copper better. And these will also handle cobalt in fiberglass pools, a full array of metals. And then a few years later, when salt chlorine systems took the market by storm, we know that adding hundreds of pounds of salt to the water really drives up the total dissolved solid level in the water. And so this purple stuff is really the same as blue, but it operates better in a high total dissolved solid environment. So in our stain treatments for iron and copper, those are the primary ones, and cobalt, you're going to see purple and blue, purple and blue, purple and blue. And it'll say, if they have a salt chlorine generator, in place of the blue stuff, use purple. All right. Now we still make pink stuff. We sell, tens of thousands of bottles a year. There's people that know they've been using it for years. They love it. They want to buy it. That's great. I'm not trying to switch anybody off, but the stain treatments now talk about blue and purple, blue and purple, blue and purple. So about 15 years ago, Jack came out with magenta stuff. And this is the hot item, especially here in Florida, because its primary target is calcium compounds. So you think of plaster dust, calcium hydroxide, all the scale removals that we're doing in swimming pools. This is great at clustering calcium compounds that are floating in solution and removing them from the water. This is so crucial to use on startups in a plaster pool. It'll talk about dosing this at a rate of 1 quart per 15,000 gallons after the pool is filled, and then 12 ounces weekly for the first month per 15,000 gallons. I'm going to get into startups here, talk about this for a couple of minutes, and then we'll go back into stain treatments because this is a really good segue into startups. Look, guys, if you're not using a sequestering agent on a startup in a plaster swimming pool, you're crazy, because no matter how well that finish is exposed, there is typically some calcium hydroxide that's getting in the water. And if that stuff is not removed, and look, adding muriatic acid, I talked to guys that, I had 10 gallons of acid the first month in most of my pools, 12, 15,000 gallons. I'm sitting there going, holy cow. Not only are they over adding acid, the reason they're doing it is the calcium hydroxide is driving up the pH and alkalinity numbers. So their first reaction is add more acid, add more acid. That doesn't remove anything from the water. It just makes the numbers look better for a few days till you're out there again and up goes the pH again. So they add more acid. Well, look, a lot of times they're starting to get into the plaster, adding all that acid with that hot of a startup. Now they're drawing more calcium out of the finish, which is not really what you want to do. You're making a bad problem worse. And so they walk away after 30 days and look in a darker colored pool within, like the background you're sitting behind you there, Lauren. I don't know if viewers can see the background. It's a light blue background. You'll see the scale start to settle within weeks. Okay, that plaster dust is going to settle out because it was never removed from the water. They didn't use a good startup product like magenta to cluster it and get it out of the water. And they'll be calling me saying, hey, the pool's scaled up. What do I do? Well, at that point, you can test for scale using the copper and scale product, which we'll get back to here when we go through the stain treatments, and see if you get removal and do an in-water scale treatment. The real problem is in the lighter color finishes, like the white pools, you don't see the scale. So plaster is curing for a year underwater. It's hydrating. Water hydrates plaster, it cures it. So you have to think about painting a wall white. You hit the first spot of the wall and you get down to the end of the wall. You see I have white walls behind me. And where you've just painted, it looks dark because the paint is still wet. But the reason it looks dark is because you're looking back and comparing it to the spot you painted 10 minutes ago, and it started to dry. It started to dry out, and it's looking lighter and lighter in color. Well, this is how plaster cures as well. Water hydrates, actually cures the plaster. So, you think about Florida, you dig 4 feet down, you got water in the ground, water in concrete, water in the plaster, water in the pool, and you're supposed to cure plaster underwater for a year. This is a delicate process. So if the plaster dust isn't removed from the water with a good sequestering agent like Jack's Magic Magenta stuff, the scale, that plaster dust will settle, usually at the deepest parts of the pool, and 6 or 8 months down the road, as the rest of the finish is drying and it starts to look lighter, you get this dark ring around the main drain. I know you've seen it, right? We've all been out on these pools where the sunlight is, when it's not hitting the pool directly, you look down at the floor of the pool and you have blotches. These grayish, sometimes darker, almost black colored blotches. And this is where the plaster did not hydrate. It didn't cure properly because it got sealed with plaster dust and water could not get in to dry it. I know, water dries plaster. It hydrates it, basically. So this is a hydration problem. And typically that has to be, the finish has to be re-exposed to dry it out. And that's a pretty aggressive process. So anyway, any questions on that? I know I kind of segued into startups from.
You're doing awesome.
Okay, so thank you. So there's a lot here to cover and we have a time frame to do it in. So I'm trying to stick with that. How are we on time, by the way?
I don't know. There's not a time clock on this.
Okay. The second test in the stain ID kit is for copper and scale. So this is great for some forms, a lot of forms of copper, but also great for calcium scale deposits. So this will do a great job in lifting it, usually within 30 to 45 seconds of direct contact. And if you get removal, then that's the second test, and it corresponds to treatment number 2. This test, again, is 30 to 45 seconds. This powder can take up to 2 weeks to work. So there's a 2-week window here, and you are keeping low pH and alkalinity in the water. You really can't swim during any of these treatments while the powder is active in the water. If it's a copper treatment, the book is going to recommend, the instructions are going to recommend blue or purple. Purple if it's a salt chlorine system. If it's a scale treatment, it's going to recommend magenta. And again, this is a full spectrum sequestrant like the others, but its primary target is calcium compounds, calcium carbonate, calcium hydroxide. So in the event of a scale removal, this would be the one you want to use to cluster that calcium that's now in the water as the powder is lifting the calcium off of the scale, off of the finish, okay? There are maintenance doses involved with all these treatments, maintenance doses of sequestering agent that need to be put in the water for 2 to 3 weeks after the treatment is completed, after the stains have been lifted. If you don't do that, the stains may come back. Just because the pool looks great does not mean there's still not metal, calcium, iron, copper, cobalt floating around in the water. So you really need to do the maintenance doses of sequestering agent for 3 weeks after you've, quote, completed the treatment. There's also with the copper and scale treatment, you're going to have low pH and alkalinity, and the instructions will talk about rebalancing slowly your pH and alkalinity. You don't want to drive the numbers up too fast. You don't want to use soda ash. It has a very high pH. It can drive things back out of solution. You want to use sodium bicarb. It has a pH of under 8. I think it's around 7.7. So it's much less aggressive in driving the pH and alkalinity back up to normal swimming levels. If you are convinced that you have copper staining, I talked to somebody yesterday that have blue stains in the pool. This product doesn't always work by itself. So don't give up. The third test, it'll tell you on the box, is a combination test of the oxidizer and the copper and scale. So in test number 2, it's going to tell you use 1/3 of the packet of this. Now, look, sometimes I spill a little or I overdose it in the bag. I usually bring 2 of these to a job just in case. I don't want to run out when I'm on a job site and have to run back to the distributor to get another one, or in my case, my truck in the parking lot. So, these are very inexpensive. So it's always good to have 2 of these on hand. If you don't use one, you can probably bring it back to where you bought it or use it on the next stained pool. But just so you don't run out of product, because this pouch here, you may use 3 times. So in the third test, which is for oxidized copper, you first apply half a packet of this oxidizer on the stained area, or if it's the stain is deep down the wall or on the floor, you're putting it in a sock, a skimmer sock, or a woman's nylon. They work really well. Men's socks are too thick. They tend to not let the powder go through, so I don't like using those. And then you're holding this on there 30 to 45 seconds. And if you get a color change from the existing stain color, a lot of times the blue or the black copper stains, you'll see this turn to a reddish brown color. Don't lose your cool. You did not stain the pool red or brown. It's going to tell you the second part of that test is the copper and scale pouch, and you're letting it sit on there 30 to 45 seconds. And if it washes it away, that's really good news. You'll really only need to let this sit for a few seconds, and it should wash that reddish brown color right away. And that's your oxidized copper treatment. That involves these 2 products going into the pool at the same time. These treatments with the copper and scale, I didn't mention it earlier, but they also involve adding muriatic acid and your sequestering agent. And in this case, since it's copper, we're going to add blue or purple. Okay, and the instructions will tell you how much to add, how many pounds of O2 Safe Shock, how many pounds of copper and scale. I get calls from people all the time. How much of this do I add? How much of this do I add? It's all in the instructions, guys. But we're here to help you. You can call me, call the factory. They'll give you my number, and I'm here to help. Okay. And again, there's reps, Jack's Magic reps all over the country, so they'll give you his number, or there'll be somebody in house that can answer the question. The great thing about calling us is we're in Pinellas County, Florida. Manufacture, bottle, package, label everything. Over 30 years. When you call us, you get a live voice in the United States at the factory. I think that's a big advantage. Some companies you call, you're getting, somebody in South Korea or overseas that, might not be in the pool business, doesn't understand what's going on. We are very hyper-focused on what we do. What I'm showing you today, this is what we do at Jack's Magic. So, this is everything to us. And we are a very driven, I'll use the word again, hyper-focused company. I think our customer service is the best in the industry. The fourth test is going to be for iron scale. So if you didn't get a reaction with one of the first 3 tests, or you got a color change or something weird happened, don't give up. Don't call us right away. Try the 4th test. And the 4th test is where you possibly had scale formed over an iron stain in the pool, where the test for iron or cobalt did not work. So and the 4th test is, again, a combo test where you're first using the copper and scale powder. Now, this is the 3rd time we've used it, possibly, right? So this is why I like to bring 2 kits to a job, just in case. You're applying 1/3 the packet on the stained area, and if it lifts a layer of scale, that stain may look darker after you do this. So then apply the iron and cobalt powder, and if it washes it away, that's an iron scale treatment, which is in the book and is going to involve using these 2 products, some muriatic acid, and then blue or purple to cluster the calcium and the iron that are in the water and remove them. And people say, well, calcium, yeah, these cluster calcium as well. It's just each product is a little bit more specific than the other for certain things. So that's why I wanted to get into these. And, I get the question from a lot of customers, are there phosphates in your product? What's in blue and purple and pink stuff which I don't have here with me, I think I mentioned that earlier, is phosphonic acid. It is not orthophosphate. It is not algae food. Yes, it does show up on phosphate tests. If you do a phosphate removal while you're using our product, I would not suggest it. It can have an impact on our product and bind it up, and not a good thing. So, but it's not creating algae food in the water or leading to more algae growth, but it can show up on certain phosphate tests. If the customer is phosphobic, that's a play on words. If they are afraid of driving up phosphate levels in their pool, Magenta is a phosphate-free sequestering agent. It's a different blend, and it's a great maintenance prevention product. Once somebody's done with the stain treatment, this is our best seller here in Florida. This can be added to the water on a weekly basis to help prevent staining, scaling of swimming pools. So, and it is phosphate-free. So if somebody is hooked on doing phosphate removals, this product would be just fine to use.
Wow, some really great products that you have there, Joel.
Thank you.
It's been very, very informative. I think I've picked up on a couple of things as you've been talking that I did not know. So hopefully my listeners will agree. So is there any new products or special latest products from Jack's Magic you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me reach in here and pull out something on what we call Exposure Magic. And hopefully I brought a card in here. Lauren, I did not. Shame on me. Let me first talk about Jack's Magic Lube. So this is a product here that is O-ring lubricant. It's a silicone Teflon mix. And you see that it comes in a jar with an applicator brush that's actually angled. And this enables the user to get all of the lubricant out of the jar. Really unique in that most lubes are sold in a tube. You never quite get all of the lube out of the tube, which can be a pain in the neck. But sometimes they step on the tube, the cap breaks off the tube. Some of the lubes are real watery that are tube. This is a real thick paste, has an applicator brush. You don't have to get your fingers all messy. Eventually you wipe your fingers on the towel and you're wiping your brow later in the day and you get lube all over the place or on the steering wheel of the truck. So this is a nice, easy, efficient way to apply O-ring lube to an O-ring. And it does a great job of sealing the little nuisance air leaks as well because it's so thick and pasty. This has been a real hit. And I don't have a brochure on it with me. I apologize, but we do have a product that we introduced a couple of years ago called Exposure Magic. And this is a chemical that basically takes the place of muriatic acid to expose the finish before the pool is filled. So on a remodel or a new finish, rather than exposing the finish with muriatic acid water like it's typical here in Florida, there's no muriatic acid in this product. It hangs on the wall, so you don't have to add soap to it like they do with acid. Muriatic acid can oxidize pigments. I have guys that are steering away from doing darker colored finishes because the exposure process oxidizes the darker colors in some spots and makes it look grayed out. Also, because Exposure Magic hangs on the walls, it does a great job at bringing all the cream to the surface and exposing the finish much better than muriatic acid, which just tends to run right down, even if you're adding soap. It's just more effective than muriatic acid, and it's environmentally friendly. When you discharge it, it actually feeds the grass. We've noticed that the grass turns greener where you discharge Exposure Magic. It's a one-man job. It can be applied with a pressure sprayer. Very unique, different way of exposing the finish. We know that muriatic acid is really nasty to work with. This is not. I have guys that use this that say, hey, my pump that I'm using to spray the acid on, I used to use to spray the acid with, my pump's lasting 7-8 times longer using your Exposure Magic than it's lasted with muriatic acid. So huge advantage there as well.
Wow.
So I wanted to mention that. The product came out about 3 years ago.
That's some you have a very different array of products that Jack's Magic provides to the industry. It's been Wonderful
Thank
talking with you today, Joel. So many unique things that you guys have to offer. And I hope that my listeners will call you. How can they reach you, Joel?
So personally here, if they want to call me in Florida, if you're in the Florida market, feel free to call me at on my cell, which is 813-368-8479. We have another rep joining us here in Florida. And I'm going to pull up his contact info if you will give me 1 second, Lauren.
If
He's going to be handling South Florida. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can people outside of Florida buy Jack's Magic products?
Oh, absolutely. We're all over North America. I'm just, if you're in Florida and you're in South Florida, Scott Bartlett's going to be handling Vero Beach South and Port Charlotte South on the West Coast, Vero Beach South on the East Coast. And his number is 954-789-5062. If you're outside of Florida, we do have reps all over the country. Best thing you can do is call us directly at the factory, toll free 800-348-1656. That number rings in Largo, Florida, or 727-536-4500. And again, we have reps all over the nation, so that work in-house for Jack's Magic, as well as rep agencies that assist us. So there's always somebody knowledgeable available to take your call.
Is there a website they can go to see a lot of these products and stuff too, Joel?
Absolutely. Visit us on the web at www. People still say www.jacksmagic, JACKS, no apostrophe, one word, jacksmagic.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on my podcast today.
Thanks for diving in today with the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. Be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. And feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts so more aquatic professionals like you can learn about the show. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast.